DreAllDay.com.
Before we start, please like and comment on this video so I can get your feedback. Also, click that subscribe button so you can get all the new content I'm dropping on this channel. And the free book, the mental handbook, physical book, Work on Your Game University, just take care of the shipping and handling, send this right to your doorstep. Let's get started. What's going on, everybody? Dre Baldwin, DreAllDay.com. We are back. 2017 NBA team by team season previews. Now we are talking to San Antonio Spurs, who had the second best record in the Western Conference, lost in the second round to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Some changes have occurred with the Spurs team, so let's take a look at their roster and see what we think about what's going to happen to them for them in 2017. So we know LaMarcus Aldridge still on the team. He may become the centerpiece along with Kawhi Leonard coming into this upcoming season. Kyle Anderson, guy who got some duty in the Spurs last year. He's going to get more chances to play this upcoming season. Matt Bonner, the Red Rockets, still there. Pau Gasol, 36 years old, picked up $15 million contract. Him and LaMarcus, I think, will work well together because they can both shoot and they can both play in the post back to the basket. Manu Ginobili, his last year in the league with the Spurs. Danny Green, outside shooter who played great during those couple years playing against the Heat in the NBA Finals. Been a little bit quieter since then, but I mean, I don't think you could get as loud as you are in the NBA Finals at any other point. So Danny Green. David Lee is on the Spurs roster this year. Good backup guy who also can do a little bit of post action. He can hit that outside shot at the power forward position, help stretch the floor. Good Spurs type big guy. Kawhi Leonard, we know, 25 years old. I think it's his time to become the man on this team. If he's going to become the man, this is the time to do it. Kevin Martin at the 2 guard, Andre Miller off the bench, Patty Mills at point guard. Of course, we still got Tony Parker and also Jonathan Simmons. So the Spurs have I like this roster as a balanced roster. They got big guys who are unselfish players who can play not only on the inside back to the basket, calling for the ball in the post, but also guys who can step out and hit that 19-foot jump shot, maybe even hit a three-pointer or two, who are unselfish players who will pass the ball, but at the same time can get you 20 points if you ask them to get you 20 points. You got the all-around guy, the Swiss Army knife in Kawhi Leonard, who can handle the ball. He can create his own shot. He can post up. He's athletic and can get up above the rim. He can defend damn near all 5 positions. He got these huge hands. He can guard a KD. He can guard a LeBron James by himself, one of the few players in the league who can do it by themselves for a 7-game series. He can even guard a point guard like a Chris Paul, Steph Curry, or Russell Westbrook. I don't know what we're going to get from Kawhi offensively. I'm trying to figure out what kind of player he's going to be in this league on this team. Now that Tim Duncan is gone, Tim Duncan's a guy I didn't even mention. Now that he's gone, I think it's time for somebody to step up and be the man on this team. I thought it might be Kawhi, but it may end up being LaMarcus Aldridge. It's not going to be Pau Gasol. We definitely do know that. But I'm looking at Kawhi Leonard's stats right here, and I think, actually looking at these stats, that it is going to be Kawhi Leonard. The guy averaged 21 points last year and 6.8 rebounds. So he's in there. He's going and taking the ball. He had 8 points his first year, then he went up to 12, then 13, and 16 and a half, then 21.2. So the guy has stepped his game up year after year. He got it 51% from the floor last season, shot more threes. His percentage went up 44% from the three-point line, 87% from the foul line, 6.8 boards, 2.5 assists, 1 block, 2 steals a game. Yes, this guy is the best player on the San Antonio Spurs. Sorry. So that's what I was wondering. I hadn't looked at the stats. Now that I looked at the stats, it is confirmed. This is Kawhi Leonard's team. He's going to have to be the dominant guy. If they're going to go somewhere and actually be a team that can get to at least to the WCF, the Western Conference Finals, where I think they're going to see that team from Oakland, the Golden State Warriors, Kawhi Leonard is going to have to be the man. Now, they're going to need a contribution from LaMarcus Aldridge. So we're going to look at LaMarcus's stats, too, now that we're here. LaMarcus Aldridge is going to have to do his thing and be that number 2 guy. I think both of these guys need to be averaging over 20 points a game. LaMarcus is going to have to give you 10 rebounds a game, definitely. Going to need to shoot about at least 55% from the floor, being that he's a big guy, even though all his shots don't come around the rim area, but he needs to be shooting at a high percentage. Last year, LaMarcus Aldridge's stats, I think, could have been better. But based on the team he was playing on the team where you had Boban a little bit off the bench, you had Manu, you had Tony Parker, Kawhi Leonard, and Tim Duncan getting their touches, what he produced based on that type of team that they had, I had to respect what he did, but he's going to have to do more. Last year, LaMarcus Aldridge gave you 18 points a game, which is his lowest scoring average since 2010. And if you go back then, you could actually say since his rookie year in the league. Because he averaged about 18 for 3 years straight in Portland. Then he went up over 20 points. He was at 22, 22, 21, 23, 23 every year in Portland. Then he dropped down to 18 this first year in San Antonio. Of course, his shot attempts went down, but his shooting percentage went up, 51% from the floor. Not a three-point shooter, hit 86% from the foul line, so he can hit that shot. Only 8.5 rebounds in 30 minutes a game. So his minutes went down a little bit. His minutes are going to have to go up. I know Greg Popovich is a guy who's always balanced out his players' minutes and things like that, but that's because he was working with a big three of older guys. Tony Parker, who's not even that old, but he has a lot of miles on his legs since he's been in the league since he was 19. Tim Duncan, who seems like he was old every year for a long time. Manu Ginobili, another guy, seems like he was old every year for a long time. But now that those guys are not going to be the focal points of this team, even though Manu's still on the team, he's not going to be the focal point. He probably won't even be starting this year. You got a young guy like Danny Green. You got a young guy in Kawhi. You got a young guy in LaMarcus Aldridge. Pau Gasol, who seems to have a good energy because he doesn't take too much banging on his body. Seems to be in good shape, it seems to me, physically year after year. He's not going to be the focal point either. He's going to be a guy playing a role, getting some time. He'll play a little bit more than Tim Duncan played, but he's not going to be the focal guy as of the big men. It's going to be LaMarcus, it's going to be Kawhi, and I think Patty Mills is going to have an increased role on this team this year, even though Tony Parker's still on the team. Hopefully Tony Parker comes back in the best shape he's been in the last 3-4 years, because they could use a guy like Tony. They're going to need a guy like Tony going up against a Russell Westbrook, a Chris Paul, a Damian Lillard, whoever Minnesota's going to have back there, Ricky Rubio or a Zach LaVine, as athletic as that guy is. And, of course, you got a guy like Steph Curry in Golden State. So the point guards in the Western Conference, you got to bring it. If you're going to play point guard on a team that's going to contend, you got to bring it. And we saw last year with San Antonio when Oklahoma City just unleashed their superstars, Russ and KD. The Spurs didn't really have an answer for it. Well, they had somewhat of an answer, but not enough of an answer because they ended up losing that series. So Tony Parker's really going to have to step up and do his thing this year with Tim Duncan gone. And Patty Mills, I think, is going to take some minutes away from Tony Parker and start to kind of take a little bit of a head role, more of a head role on that team. If Patty Mills ever becomes the everyday starter, maybe if Tony Parker goes away, if he'll be around long enough, Patty Mills, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much of a contender you have with Patty Mills as your number one point guard. But off the bench, I like Patty Mills as that point guard spot, which is why Tony Parker needs to do his thing as the number one guy. But overall, let's just come back to the two guys, Kawhi and LaMarcus Aldridge. Now, Kawhi getting 21 points a game last year, I think he can jump that up. The scoring average is going up every year in the league. He went from 8 points to 12 to 13 to 16, 16 and a half to 21. So can he get it up to 25? If Kawhi Leonard can get up to 25 points a game this upcoming season, I think he's going to be in an MVP discussion. He'll definitely be an all-star again. And this team will finish as one of the top in the Western Conference. They can finish as a number 2 seed in the West. They can be a top 2 team in the Western Conference. I think the teams they're going to compete with this year in the West, Portland is a team that needs to be paid attention to. The Clippers are a team you got to pay attention to. Even though they're not going to win a title, they are going to be very good in the regular season. So they got great players. I think the Spurs can be definitely a top 3 team. I definitely see them finishing in the top 3 as long as everyone stays healthy. LaMarcus Aldridge averaged 18 points a game last year. That's not going to cut it. At the amount of money they're paying him, the fact that he is either the best or second best player on his team night after night, LaMarcus Aldridge needs to be averaging about at least 22 points a game. He also needs to get his rebounding up into the double figures. And again, it's not because he underperformed last year. He was getting fewer minutes. He wasn't getting as many touches. And you got a damn Hall of Famer, one of the best big men of all time on the team who has to be on the court at sometimes, and he does take some attention. Tim Duncan was getting the ball. Now that Tim Duncan's gone, even though Powell is in there, Pau Gasol ain't no Tim Duncan. LaMarcus Aldridge needs to step up to 22 and 10 this year. Kawhi Leonard is still going to get his 7-8 rebounds a game. He needs to be up to about 24, 25 points a game this year. If the Spurs are going to be serious contenders, that's what those two guys got to do. And Greg Popovich needs to let those guys play. No 30 minutes a game for LaMarcus. LaMarcus needs to be up about 35 minutes a game. Kawhi needs to be at 35 minutes a game. Now, at the point guard, you can have those two guys, platoon there. You got Ginobili, you got Danny Green, you got some athletic guys at that wing spot. And the bigs, you got Pau Gasol. I don't know who the other bigs the Spurs have. Let me take a look. See who the other bigs that the Spurs have who can come off the bench, because I know they lost Boban. He went up to Detroit. But you have Matt Bonner, who can play in spot duty, hitting some threes. You got Dwayne Dedmon, athletic, big guy, 7 feet tall. Who else you got at the big spots? David Lee, he can still get in there and play. And that's pretty much it. Spurs don't have a lot of bigs, quote-unquote bigs, on this roster overall. But now that so many teams are going small ball, Spurs are definitely going to do some small ball. Even with LaMarcus and Powell, those guys can hit that outside three-point shot. They are both, I would say, technically power forwards. But whatever, it doesn't really matter what position you want to call them. I think, again, those two guys got to do their thing. Popovich got to let them play. If all those things happen, the Spurs can be a top 2 seed in the Western Conference. Can they beat the Golden State Warriors in the series? Because I think the Warriors are going to be the top team in the Western Conference. Can they beat the Warriors in the series with the team that they have right now, with everybody playing at their best? The answer is no, they can't. They would not beat the Golden State Warriors with this team, even if everything's hitting on all cylinders. They just don't have the firepower. I don't think Tony Parker has the jets to go with a guy like Steph Curry anymore. And even though Patty Mills has the speed and athleticism to go with Steph Curry, Patty Mills just don't have the game to go with Steph Curry to make Steph Curry work as hard as Steph Curry is going to make him work defensively. And Steph Curry is the best player on that team, so that's a huge issue that they don't have anybody who can go with a guy like Steph Curry. On top of that, now that they've added Kevin Durant, who is Kawhi Leonard going to guard? Is he going to guard Kevin Durant? Is he going to guard Steph Curry? Probably needs to guard one of those two guys. Which one is he going to guard? And if he does guard Steph Curry, who is Tony Parker or Patty Mills going to guard? Klay Thompson? And let Klay kind of eat them up by backing down and even shooting a fadeaway over top of them? I don't see how it works. And again, I'm talking about these teams in this way. I'm talking about these individual team matchups because I consider the Spurs to be a contending team. If you're going to contend, you got to beat the team that is at the top. The Warriors are at the top, so how are they going to match up with this team? I just don't know how the matchups would shake out. And on top of all of this, if the Spurs are actually going to beat Golden State in the series, who has all that firepower, Klay can get you 20. We know Kevin Durant can get 30. We know Steph Curry can get 30. We got Draymond with the all-around stuff. We know the Warriors got a pretty good team. We know they got a damn good team, right? With all of that, if the Spurs are going to beat them, that means the players on the Spurs need to get on all cylinders and do their thing. That means you need a guy like Kawhi who can go out and get 30 3 or 4 times in a series for them to win. Look at the Cavs beating Golden State last year in the finals. How many games, if you added up every time LeBron had at least 30 and every time Kyrie Irving had at least 30, how many times is that? I'm not going to pull up the stats, but I guarantee it was probably at least 7 times total. If you added both of their 30-plus games up, you got at least 7 of them. I'm just going to assume. Maybe I'm wrong. Somebody can look that up and let me know. The Spurs are going to need that. If you're going to beat Golden State in the series, somebody got to step up and put the ball in the basket. LaMarcus Aldridge got to do it. Kawhi Leonard got to do it. They both need to be doing it. It can't be just one guy. Both guys got to be doing it if they're going to win a 7-game series against that team with all the firepower that team has. Now, obviously, we don't know how the Warriors are going to play yet, but even if they just had their team from last year, you got to have guys step up and really, really go every game. What the Spurs lacked last year was why they lost to Oklahoma City, because OKC had it, and KD and Russell Westbrook. So the Spurs are going to have to get those guys to step up. Neither of them has done that for a whole season yet, which is why it's somewhat of a question mark, but I think they are both capable. Will they actually do it? That's a different question. But you tell me what you think. Questions, comments, praise, concerns, criticisms, leave them down here in the comments of this San Antonio Spurs 2017 season preview. Next, we only got 2 teams left, so we'll start with the runner-up, the Golden State Warriors. We'll be talking about tomorrow. Everybody work on your game. DreAllDay.com.